Hello, everyone. Welcome to the You Are a Severance podcast. We are back with episode 5. I am Callie Thomas, and this is my co-host, Rodnesha Green.
What's up, Sebby? We don't have I'm just thinking about it. We don't have a group name for Severance fans. Is there a group name out there?
Is it Sevies? I've heard some people say Sevies.
Okay, I'm not the only one saying that.
I guess, but I think actually most people just call themselves an innie, right? Like
that's
true. Your fandom world is the innie, and then your regular world, when you have to check back out and pay attention to real life, is your outie.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. I always want to say Sevies, but I was like, is that just me?
Maybe I've just seen
it might be.
You say Sevies on the internet and thought it was somebody else. Maybe it is just you. I don't know. Does anybody else say Sevies?
Let's make Sevies happen, people. No, we don't have to do that. It's fine. Any outie is fine. I think I realized too that even though I was saying Sevies just because it's a shortened form, but then it's also the paperclip thing or the mascot thing.
Oh, that's right. Sevy from the Lexington letter. It's like their bootleg clippy. Yeah, that's right.
It could work. It could work.
Yeah. I saw someone yesterday say it's getting to the point where they need to have the Severance procedure to watch Severance because it is consuming their whole world and they're not paying attention to things that they need to be paying attention to. So we need to be severed so that our innies can just focus on the show.
That is not the worst idea. To be honest, I have had that thought when I posted that TikTok and I was like, I'm literally laying here in bed like, well, what is this fourth appendix? I can't get this out of my brain. I gotta discuss it. And I was like, this is consuming my life. I have told multiple people I work with, I was like, the show is consuming my life. So that might not be the worst idea.
That's so funny.
Like my innie just works the show.
Yeah.
Does the pod. And then I can jump back in when life happens. Actually, I don't want that part of it because I don't like life. Let the innie do life. And I'll just focus on the show.
The innie do the life part. We'll switch it around. Okay, so the innie is everything else.
It's like innie can pay bills, innie can go to work, innie can deal with the political drama, and then I can just come and enjoy the show. I like that better. Let's do that.
Yeah, that works. Okay, I like it. Well, we are here to discuss season 2, episode 5. We are halfway through season 2 already. Can you believe it? I cannot.
No, but yes, but no.
It's a ride.
And it's been the most enjoyable and stressful and fun-filled and dramatic ride for just 4 episodes and now 5.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get into it, but we've discussed already that it feels like so much happened so quickly, but so much has happened to be the halfway point that you're like, oh my gosh, there's still 5 more episodes. What else is going to happen? So much has happened.
And we're getting 1 more episode than we did last season.
Yes, which I love.
And they have already jam-packed these first 5. This first half has been fraught with information, exploration, adventure.
Questions.
A lot of questions.
So many questions.
And this is the funnest part too, but also not. It's like you get a question answered and then you get another question on top.
Every answer is really just 3 more questions trying to fool you. If we come in a package, maybe it'll sound like an answer. But really, when you break it down, it's just more questions.
It's just more questions. Surprise. Well, I also wanted to ask you before we jump into it. Episode's title is Trojan's Horse. And I remember when they showed it on Apple TV last week as like, here's what's coming next.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing it and was like, Trojan's Horse? Isn't it just Trojan Horse? Why is it Trojan's Horse? And then I was trying to figure out what that could possibly mean.
You know, I didn't even catch that, Rodnesha. That is a good catch. Yeah, I was like, what do you mean, what's a Trojan horse? Oh, you're right. You're right. Trojan horse, not a Trojans. Huh.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, is this just more Rickeniness that's just like, you just don't really know what words mean? Or
words mean, yeah, you just don't say them correctly.
Right. Or possession or whatever.
Yeah.
Or is there hidden information in the apostrophe? Is there something in
Lord.
between? I didn't have time to figure it out. I wanted to. I wanted to take the deepest of deep dives, but I was like, there's just enough I got to deal with just in this episode. I can't figure out.
You know, sometimes I'm okay with not noticing something because then it's just, again, more questions.
But that's the worst part about this show is that it has made me pay attention to everything.
Like, everything.
Like, there's an apostrophe on that Trojan. Why?
What does this mean?
It's the worst. I can't just watch and enjoy. Nothing can just escape my attention now. It's the best and the worst simultaneously.
It's true. It's true.
Well, with that said, let's just go ahead and get into it. All right, guys, let me hit you with that brief summary. In Trojan's horse, the plot thickens as Mark S. and the MDR team grapple with Irving's sudden dismissal. Determined to honor their colleague, they organize an unconventional funeral, complete with a melon carved in Irving's likeness, a nod to corporate absurdity. Meanwhile, Helly returns to the severed floor, struggling with the blurred lines between her identities as both Helly and Helena. Mark's reintegration efforts intensify, leading to unsettling physical side effects and resurfacing past traumas. The mysterious Cold Harbor file emerges as a pivotal element, hinting at Lumon's grandiose and potentially nefarious plans. Meanwhile, on the outside, Irving has an unexpected encounter with Bert, forcing them to confront and uncover the lingering emotions and unanswered questions from their innies past. And as the episode unfolds, personal missions intertwine with corporate schemes, setting the stage for revelations that could upend the world of Lumon Industries. And that is your summary.
Bum, bum, bum. A whole lot.
It is a whole lot.
Oh man. Okay, so before we get to the scene by scene breakdown, our guest stars for this episode are Dari Olafsson as Mr. Drummond, Robbie Benson as the mysterious exports hall man. We'll get there. Karen Aldridge is back as Asal Ragabi, and Sydney Cole Alexander back as Natalie Kalin. Our co-stars are Claudia Robinson as Felicia, Rachel Addington as Elizabeth, Mark Kenneth Smaltz as Judd, good old Judd, and Mark Geller as Kier Egan. And this episode was written by Megan Ritchie, who was a writer's assistant for the first 4 episodes and then has led this episode. Ooh. That's so cool. And then this episode is directed by Sam Donovan.
Okay, guys, buckle your seatbelts.
Here we go.
Here we go. Woo. All right. In our first section, we're back to a traditional cold open. And when I say traditional, I mean it is like it's quick and then it's done.
Shortest cold open ever.
Especially for this show. So the episode opens on the back of an older gentleman's head. He's in scrubs, pushing a metal cart down the familiar Lumon halls. He enters a blue room full of morgue-like drawers, and we see Felicia and Elizabeth waiting in the corner. Those are the two from O&D, and they're standing there at the ready. So this mysterious man who is whistling, and his face is just continually obscured, we just don't ever see it, asks once he arrives, "Do you have it?" Elizabeth then tentatively opens one of the drawers and pulls out a tray that is full of what appears to be dental tools, and she hands it over to him. The man says, "Thank you," and then turns around to wheel the tray off, and we see him cart it all the way down with an eerie twitch to his head as he disappears down toward the export hallway and into the elevator and black. All right. I know you saw one of my notes.
Yeah. I was like, what? Oh, well,
so
tell us.
Guys, you know I love a music clue and a music cue. And so as soon as he started whistling, I was like, what's that? Like, what is this and what does it mean? Whistling? What is it all about? The first thing I thought when I saw it was like, oh, it kind of sounds like an old sea shanty or like some Baroque period style like music. It was very all I can say, it was very sea shanty type of song. So I was like, is this some old tale of whatever type of song? I don't know. So I tried first to Shazam it because I'm a weirdo. My Shazam failed me, did not detect it, didn't know what it was. So then I was like, you know what? I know Google has like a little listening thing where you can like hum and whistle into it. And then
oh my gosh, I love it.
Took me about 5 tries. I tried to whistle it and it was like, do you mean this? And I was like, none of these sound like this.
No.
And then I tried whistling it again or humming it. And I was just like, maybe it's me. Let me just put it up to the TV. So then did it on like the 4th or 5th try, searched the music clues. And then the last time I did it, I found it. My God, I found it. So the song is called Back Home in Derry. Hey everyone, Rodnesha here from the Edit Bay to make a correction. So at this point in the episode, I was going to state that the song that I found was called Back Home in Derry by Christy Moore on her album Ride On from 1984. This is kinda true. I mentioned that the song is a cover of an Irish rebel song poem written by Bobby Sands for her around the 1980s when he was imprisoned. And she set it to the melody of The Wreck of Edmund Fitzgerald, which is by Gordon Lightfoot, written in 1976. Well, turns out that it's most likely just a direct reference to the Gordon Lightfoot 1976 tune, but I felt it was worth mentioning Does it matter? Lyrically, yes. The Gordon Lightfoot song details a shipwreck that happened on the Great Lakes in 1975, and it's mostly talking about the voyage and the tragedy of the wreck. The More Sands song details the voyage of Irish rebels to Australia after taking part in Robert Emmet's rebellion, and mostly describes the hardship of the journey, the cruelty of 20 years of indentured servitude until death, and the longing for home. So I just wanted to clarify and make sure that you had both sets of information. Again, most likely they were referencing the Gordon Lightfoot song directly, but since Google pointed me to the Christy Moore song and I did find some parallels in the lyrics for that song, you guys can take what you will information-wise from either or. Okay, back to the episode. So I just found it very interesting. Number one, it speaks to a lot of the themes of Severance already present, but I found it even more interesting that this guy, random whoever export hall dude, is whistling it. Why?
Yeah, some guy.
Why are you whistling about enslavement and wanting freedom and rebellion?
Yeah, why is he whistling it? And why is his head twitchy? I was like, ooh, what is wrong? It's very bird-like or bug-like. Like
it did have a bird. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, ooh, okay, what have they done to this man? Right. Like I automatically just from the head twitching assume this guy doesn't have an Audi. This guy has been on the floor for a long time. I think this guy does crazy things for them down on the chessy floor. That's what I just assume all kinds of terrible things have been done to him because why is he twitchy?
I don't disagree with that. I don't think you're wrong about thinking that. And I do, on the theme of that, find it interesting if the whistling might be a way that his like past life, former life, whatever, is like trying to, I don't know, trying to project something out of a consciousness that is trapped within or something like that. Because I thought of, oh gosh, I can't think of the sci-fi show or movie, but it was essentially like someone kept singing a song or humming a song, but they didn't know why. And it ended up being like connected to like their either former life or past life or something like, I wish I could remember because now it's going to bug me that I can't think of it. But it's like that song was just like kind of autopiloting through their brain. And they would always be like, I don't know why I'm singing that song. I don't know what that song is. And then it ended up being something very pertinent to a life they had previously.
Yeah.
Could that be what this is? I don't know. Maybe. But the twitchiness was weird. And I didn't even catch it the first go around, and then I saw your notes when I went back to watch it again last night. I was like, oh, he is really
twitchy, especially the last part as he's walking away. You just see his head tick.
What's going on at that dang elevator? I don't know. I also found it interesting that they had gloves on their hands. Did you notice that?
Yes.
Why?
It was very sterile. It was very medical. And my other question was like, yeah, why is it like a morgue? I was very worried about what was going to come out of those drawers.
You thought it was a body?
I was like, what the heck is this?
It's weird because those are the same drawers that like Bert was kind of going into for archives, but it was in a different area. And the setup, the way they were set up in that space did look like morgue drawers, which I was like, oh, that's eerie. I don't like that.
Yeah, because I feel like the other part of O&D where the art is kept is a bunch of different shapes, you know, like some of them are thinner drawers and some, you know, they're not all the same, but this was just all. And the only thing I noticed, I was like, well, the handles look different than other morgue drawers I've seen on TV. So that was like that, and the fact that it's blue and not like stainless steel.
But wouldn't it be funny if there were bodies in there?
Oh my goodness. I was like, is it about to be Irving? Oh no.
Also, dental tools?
Yeah. So they make hatchets and they make watering cans and they make dental tools. Like, what is going on?
And there weren't a lot of them. It wasn't like it was boxes and boxes of dental tools or something. Like just one tray.
Yeah.
With like maybe 5 sets of each thing, like some mirrors, some little plaque scrapey things.
Yeah.
This is what we were talking about earlier, guys, with the one thing gets answered, another 5 questions jump out at you. Why? What is all this? What's all this? And it's the fact too that they looked very unnerved when he showed up. So it wasn't like, okay, you know, we got to go get the dental tools for the export guy. It literally was like, stand still, just wait, don't move. Without them saying that was kind of like how I was reading. And it was like, all right, just stand here. And okay, he's asking us. And then Felicia had to be like, go ahead, get it out. And Elizabeth looked very apprehensive to pull out dental tools. So it's just like, why are y'all acting weird?
Yeah, it made it seem like to me that there's a big reaction or some kind of punishment. Like if for some reason what they have made is not correct, it's not ready to go.
And that would also explain Felicia's disdain when she was talking to Irving about how they send a guy now, because maybe
They send a guy
there's a
now.
punishment when he gets sent and it ain't correct or it isn't what they asked for.
Right.
Who is this guy? Oh,
I don't know.
all right.
Oh no.
Well, anyway.
Well, let's move into the next scene. So, next we see Mark in his kitchen taking an assortment of different pills, different colors and sizes, and then he's drinking some sort of opaque elixir while he talks to Devon on the phone. And Devon asks how it's going with burning the image into his retinas, and he tells her he still can't get it to last long enough. And just as Devon is inquiring about, like, okay, so what happens next? What are the next steps? He hears the door opening and he abruptly ends the call with her. And then Ragabi enters, and we learn that she has been staying with Mark since that first reintegration procedure. Mm-hmm. Mark asks her when are they going to keep going and lets her know that he hasn't gotten any more flashes since the first little bit, to which she responds, well, maybe your innie has. Then at Lumon, Helena walks down the corridor toward the boardroom where Mr. Drummond and Natalie sit waiting. And she speaks, presuming they are going to tell her father of her failure to integrate the severed floor, and says he should hear it from me. Mr. Drummond says that they have decided to spare him of this contretemps. And Helly looks surprised. Mr. Drummond suggests another obligement session to help balance out her tempers, but Helly declines, stating that she is fine. So Natalie then reinforces how close they are with Mark S., and Helena realizes Natalie's implication that it's time for her Annie to return to the severed floor, which angers Helena and says, you know, both her Annie and that other one are effing animals. They tried to kill her, and that she'll just go down and fake it again. But, you know, they can't take that risk. Mr. Drummond and Natalie both say they can't afford any more errors, and the board appreciates her sacrifice.
All right, let's jump back up to Mark.
Yeah. So immediately I was like, oh, this is the aftercare that PD didn't do. He didn't keep up with his pills and his elixirs.
So what do you think happened there? Do you think that he just flipped out and then just left home and left all his stuff?
I think he was, exactly. Okay. I think he was too paranoid to stay home.
Okay.
He thought he was being watched because in that last week, he was being watched, at least at Lumon, by Miss Cobell. We know she noticed signs of reintegration. So that with the reintegration sickness, that probably carried over into the outside, feeling like being watched. And then I think he just fled to that greenhouse and didn't bring his stuff with him. And the elixirs had to be kept in the fridge too. So
yeah.
I
also wonder if, because of the way Ragabi did the procedure with Petey, if his reintegration happened too fast, too suddenly, because Mark's is happening more gradual. And I don't know if that's a result of her being like, I've improved the procedure so that you start receiving at a slower pace. Because Petey only had a week and he lost his effing mind.
Yeah. And I have a question about that later when we get later down back around to another scene with Ragabi based on something that Mark says. But yeah, I was like, I don't know how much of it could have changed between Petey and Mark, but it seems like they're having very different experiences.
Very different. I think everyone is expecting that this reintegration will be instantaneous, and that like as soon as it happens, like your minds should be able to access one another immediately. And maybe some of that is prompted by the experience we saw with Petey, which is like by the point we saw him, he's having flashes here and there and all throughout the day and regularly just kind of like, now I'm at Lumon, now I'm back here. And Mark's saying that he hasn't had a flash since the first one, and we're assuming it's been some days, at least maybe a week. So clearly not as instantaneous, I think, as everyone was expecting it to be.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's a procedure thing or if it's just that Mark is different, his brain's different, and it's processing it in a different way.
Yeah.
Do you want to play a fun game?
Sure. What's the game?
It's called What's on Mark's Fridge? As soon as Ragabi walked in and they had like the kind of tracking shot go from like him being in focus to her, it like for a split second had his fridge in focus. And I was like, oh, what's all that? What's that stuff?
Yeah.
Now, again, these are all probably just fun little nods. They might mean something. They might not. But, you know, you guys come to us for the insights and the know-how and the banter. So we're going to give you the insights, the know-how, and the banter. So the first thing I noticed was like the kind of blue and white image that was on his fridge, right? And I was like zooming in and I was like, okay, that looks like Offerstung, I don't know German.
Yeah, I clicked on your link and I was like, wait a minute, what is this?
Yeah, so
because...
So that, yeah, exactly. So apparently it is a word, but it is also a play or a story written by von Leo Tolstoy, who I think is a German author. I found that exact image, although it was not the main image. So they got the most obscure looking one to put on Mark's fridge, but I did
Hmm.
find it. So it says in German that the word translates to resurrection.
Mhm.
It can also mean revival or resurgence. So very poignant to what Mark is going through right now. And then the book that was published by Leo Tolstoy, it is a novel. It's called Resurrection. It was published in 1899. It was his final novel. And when it was, I guess, translated for the English audience, it was translated as The Awakening. And it's supposed to be a panoramic view of Russia at the end of the 19th century, exploring the injustice of man-made laws and the hypocrisy of institutionalized church. It also explores the economic philosophy of Georgism, which Tolstoy became a strong advocate of. So to me, that connects to Lumon, because we're looking at Lumon as kind of like this religious institution to these innies, right?
Mm-hmm.
But clearly there is some hypocrisy in their setup and the way they are conducting their organization, what they're claiming Kier's teachings teach, and what they're enforcing of Kier's teachings, right? So I feel like that's probably a little just kind of, again, nod to the internal life Mark's Indian experiencing.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, do we think this is something like Mark keeping a playbill from a play?
Possibly.
Or is it more like something that he is actually researching in his questioning of Lumen? I mean, as far back as the introduction of PD into his life, but more recently, all of the stuff with his Innie and Miss Casey. And
I don't know. The way it was fixed onto the fridge makes it seem like it's just an image of the book cover. So I don't know if maybe it's something Mark has read in the past. Maybe it was something him and Gemma discussed, because it seems like a very collegey.
He was a history teacher and she was
She
was she literature or
I should be able to remember this.
I can't remember what she taught.
I can't either.
But I mean, Tolstoy, I think, could fall in either realm, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, that was that one. I got a little annoyed because I was trying to find that other image that was on there and I could not find it. This is where Google failed me. Google image search did not help me out. Part of it probably is because I just couldn't get a clear enough shot, because literally that half second,
it was fast.
It was very fast. Listen, I hit that space bar so many times to try to get it as close to in focus as I possibly could. I got pretty close, but not close enough to where I could read it, because I tried to read it with my naked eye and I could not. And then tried to do the Google image search, and that took a while and I just gave up. I was like, I'm wasting too much time. It's late.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, Rodnesha from the Edit Bay again to make another clarification. So I did eventually figure out the other image that is on Mark's fridge. It is a cartoon from the December 23rd issue of Harper's Weekly from 1871. The caption below it reads, "The Russian Bear and the American Deers." And it's basically a depiction of the Grand Duke Alexis, aka Alexei Alexandrovich Romanov of Russia, aka the Russian Bear, who became quite the celebrity on his American tour to hunt in Denver, Colorado. He was known to be quite the womanizer, hence him being surrounded by all the young women in the cartoon, but I am only pointing this out for two reasons. One, this made him quite the celebrity when he came to the US to visit, and that led to him being commemorated in popular songs, stage plays, works of art, etc. And this matters because Gemma was a Russian literature professor at Gans, which is what we could not remember. And this is the link that ties the two images together on Mark's fridge and that explains why they're there. And now that we're all caught up on that, let's get back to the episode. Okay, bye. So we've got Ragabi coming in. She's sleeping in the basement. Mark's basement has basically become Motel 6.
Yeah.
You got Petey,
right.
We got Ragabi. I mean, everybody just come, have fun, stay for a while. She's
right.
asking about snacks. You need to fix your machine. I was like, she done got real comfortable.
Right. She's demanding. She is really, I mean, that's been her demeanor the entire time. True. So we shouldn't be surprised. But I'm also like, I'm keeping you safe, lady, giving you housing when you on the run.
Right.
I just had a thought.
Okay, share.
Do we think maybe Ragabi told Mark not to tell Devon?
I wouldn't put it past her to tell Mark, like, you cannot tell anybody, not even your sister, that you've been reintegrated. So that would make more sense. That would let Mark off the hook a little bit for not saying anything.
Yeah. Because I was like, what the hell, Mark?
Like, of all people, Devon should be like your ride or die that you could entrust. And the fact that not only does she not know he's been reintegrated, but she still thinks that he's doing this retina thing, burning a hole in his eyeball. So he hasn't even told her that. But I guess probably because if he says that, then she's going to be like, well, what else do we want to try? And he already has his solution. So
Yeah.
I keep worrying. This whole episode, there are just all these things that I'm worried about creating emotional rifts between relationships. And this is one of them because I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, you need Devon, and I don't want this to
Right.
cause like a rift by keeping secrets and her not knowing what's going on and not being in the
Yeah.
know. So just flirting with that line. So do we want to move on to Helly? Is there any or Helly? See, now that she's back, I
Yeah.
just want to call her Helly. I don't even want to acknowledge the other one, but
Well, this heifer is not Helly. Helena for sure. She's a Helena
you were like,
only.
let's be clear. So yeah, I love the tracking shots that they do with her when she's walking down the Lumen halls. It's always
Yeah.
very interesting the way they light her to indicate certain things. So when we had that initial one after the gala, it's like the hall is
Mm-hmm.
very dark, but then you've got these clear glossy windows and like she is very like spotlight lit, right? So that you have an eye
Yeah.
on her the whole time and like almost luminescent. This one was the complete opposite. You've got a lot of backlight from the windows. She's in shadow. So this is clearly a walk of
Mm-hmm.
shame, disgraceful
Like,
walk.
ooh, you in trouble.
And I just love that the visual storytelling adds to the narrative, right? In that way, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, so this is a turn in disgrace walk. We aren't walking bold and valiant and full of confidence. Like,
Yeah.
crap.
Right.
Crap.
Right.
Um, I'm so curious about Natalie. I'm so
Okay.
curious because the fact that she's able to sit in on all of these meetings and
Oh
all
no.
of these discussions. And at first I was like, well, she's basically the eyes and ears of the board. And as we
Right.
noted before, whenever she's got that headpiece on, it's like, oh, the board's probably listening in. So it makes sense to send her
Yeah.
in a recording capacity. But stuff like this, she doesn't have the device on and she's actually giving
Yeah.
input to how we're going to do things.
Right.
And I'm just like, where does she sit on the hierarchy of things here?
Yeah, we know she is the liaison and the PR person for everything outside of Lumen too, but I think she is the liaison for any
Mm,
communication from the board, whether the board is actively listening at that moment or not, right?
mm,
And then that tells us too that that also includes Helena, that Helena doesn't have the same access to the board that Natalie does, because Helena even has to ask permission to speak to her father. Like
right?
she doesn't have
Just free access. Yeah.
free access to her own dad.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how Natalie got to that position, but I almost wonder if Mr. Drummond definitely has come in to have a very important role, but I almost wonder that even though he's leading these meetings, that if needed be, Natalie could also have information that Mr. Drummond doesn't have.
Very possible. I'm now curious what Mr. Drummond's position in this company is as well, because when he was
Yeah,
introduced, it almost just seemed like he was a body man
right.
for James. And now it's like, oh no, he's
Mm-hmm.
actually getting to make executive calls and he's
Mm-hmm.
holding the review meeting. So I was like, well, now wait a minute, who is this guy?
Yeah,
So
very confusing.
it's very interesting, the two of them, what they represent, where the board is concerned, where, because it almost is like, if we say it's this, then it's this, because the board trusts our decision making on these matters. Like they don't always have to check in,
Yeah,
which is very curious. And especially for Natalie, I'm just like, how did you gain their trust to that
yeah,
degree where you could just kind of speak to a situation and not have to clear it with them, because they just so emphatically presume that your voice is their voice. So whatever you say will
right.
be in a line and they don't have to question it.
I don't know.
Now I want a Natalie backstory. I just want everybody's backstory at this point.
All of
Everybody, give me everybody. Every
it.
face you've seen, I want to know
Yeah.
how they got there. You said the same thing that I did about
Hmm.
the father line, which I was
Yeah.
like, you caught it too. Yes.
Yeah.
Do we think that Mr. Drummond is related to
Is
Helly?
yeah.
Helena? Oh, I can't.
Yeah. Helena?
Oh. I spent all season
No.
calling this woman
Oh, it's
Helena, and
Helly.
now I can't stop
Right.
calling her Helly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because the father encouraged it and not your father
Right.
encouraged it, or just
Or
he
he,
encouraged it.
exactly.
Hmm. I was like, yeah, is he Helena's brother? And Mr. Drummond is just like a pseudonym? Why, if so?
Mm,
Yeah, but that was weird. Or is it just like the company calls him
him
father?
father. Yeah. I did wonder the same. Except that I don't know that I've ever heard Natalie. Now, granted, I don't know if Natalie has talked much
Mm-mm.
about James, but I don't think that she's ever referred to him as father, because I remember.
Well,
Go on.
oh, no. And I was just going to say, yeah. And I don't think that I've heard anyone refer to just Jane, period.
True.
It's always the board, the board, the board.
True. I think the only thing I'm thinking about is when Helena was in Helly as Helena during the last episode of season one, was in the bathroom. And I think, didn't Natalie come in to say that her father wanted to speak with her, or that someone wanted to speak with
Yes.
her? And I
Yeah.
don't
That's
remember
true.
how
Yeah.
she referenced him or how she introduced him, but
Yeah, I think she's said like your father's here or I have your father.
okay. So again, not fathers here,
Hmm.
but
Father.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do wonder about Mr. Drummond. It could be a pseudonym. I also wondered maybe if he's a half sibling and not a full sibling, and maybe that's why
Mm.
he's not in line to take the throne, so to speak.
Yeah, but why would he be so important? Because I
Ooh.
feel like just from what we have learned about Kier's life, I don't feel like the Egans would treat a bastard like that.
But you know what it makes me think of? Do you remember that series that was based on the Edgar Allan Poe Fall of the House of Usher?
Yeah.
It makes me think, is it one of those situations where like with the lead usher where it was like any child of mine, bastard or not, they get to be a
Yeah.
part of what I'm building, they get to be a part of the company, they get to build up my industry.
Yeah.
But the ones that were like directly between him and his first wife kind of had a little more of a
Hmm.
tiered eminence in the
Right.
line.
But that doesn't explain Drummond, right?
Well, maybe he don't want you to go by Egan because you're not like an Egan. So you can be a part of this company, but you can't carry the name. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. It may not be that at all.
That's yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know because of like it would seem like it would fall through like the male line and he would still have the Egan
It
name, even
would
though it's
ordinarily, again, unless,
yeah, ordinarily. Right.
but I don't know. That might not be it at all. But that's just what it made me think of. I was like, oh, maybe it's like that Robert Usher thing where he's just like, yeah, any kid
Yeah,
I fathered, they can come be in my circle or whatever.
right.
But maybe it's like when it comes to handing down the line, it'll go to full-fledged Egan, you know,
Yeah.
or it might not be.
Interesting.
I don't know. We'll find out, I guess,
Yeah.
when we get backstory on Mr.
So yeah,
Drummond.
he was like, yeah, we need backstory on Mr. Drummond too.
Oh, I need to know who this man is.
Right.
He showed up with authority,
Oh my goodness.
no buildup or nothing.
Yeah, crazy. The other thing about this exchange was just, I'm just doubling down on like, Helena, you're a sick F for sleeping with Mark because you are so disgusted by the innies. You're so disgusted. She's like, they're animals. I was like, well, then why did you sleep with one?
Okay, which is it?
Yeah,
Lady, which is it?
yeah.
All right. So let's go on to our next section. So we've got Helly, true Helly, back at MDR. So
Mhm.
upon reaching the severed floor, the door opens and an out of sorts Helly R stares wide-eyed into the void. And when we look across from her, we see who is waiting for her, which is Miss Wong. And she's in pigtails and a smile. And Helly looks very unnerved to see a child there and asks who she is. And of course, Miss Wong very plainly says, Miss Wong. And she asks Helly to follow her, where Mr. Milchick will explain everything. So Helly is brought to Mark and Dylan as Mr. Milchick opens the door to invite them into his office. A confused but determined Helly storms in first, demanding to know what's going on and why Irving tried to drown her. Dylan tells Helly it's because she's an Egan, and Mark asks, yeah, were you spying on us? Everything is chaotic right now. Everyone's yelling. Helly's startled because obviously this is the first that she's hearing that her outie basically supplanted her. Now, Milchick begins to explain that this was the result of a Glasgow block. And he says it essentially allows your outie. And before he's able to finish his sentence, he's interrupted by an enraged Helly who is realizing that her outie hijacked her life. Dylan yells, where is Irving? Answer my question. And Milchick, astonished, says, excuse me? And it's in that moment that he realizes that the inmates are trying to run the prison, the patients are trying to run the asylum. He is losing control. So he waits. And then he calmly attempts to explain that Helena Egan was attempting to do research by way of a Grokschepen, which is a noble tradition done by both her and Kier Egan as a way to be among their workers and get a true sense of their wants and needs. Everybody side-eyes this. And Mr. Milchick goes on to say that since Irving didn't realize this was her intention, that's why he nearly drowned Helly, and thus the only option was permanent dismissal. So Milchick lies again, telling the team that Irving's outie is on a cruise vacation, but Dylan doesn't care because as far as he's concerned, his friend is dead. Helly continues to assert that her outie had no right to take her body and steal her life. Mark and Dylan continue to call foul on Mr. Milchick's musings about what's going on. And finally, Dylan asks, is Irving ever going to come back? Milchick pauses and says no. And it'll take time to adjust, but for now, it's time to get back to work. And he escorts them back to MDR.
Lord.
Okay, I have to do the quote line. I laughed a lot in this episode, more than you would think. There were some funny moments, but when he goes through that whole rigmarole and finally reveals, Irving's not coming back,
Right.
and he looks around and he says, "It'll take some time to absorb all that has occurred. This went well."
Right. Wait, well, excuse me?
I literally said, "Ah, what?"
What? Are we in the same room right now? What?
I laughed. I laughed real hard at that line.
Yeah.
Okay, so Helly is back, our Helly, real Helly. And can I tell you, as soon as she showed up on that floor, I was like, it's all of the
Yeah.
thisisms, the
Yeah.
things that you can't
Yeah.
quite explain with your mouth, but you can see it and you
Explain.
can feel it.
Yeah. And it's just, again, it's just like to Britt Lauer's credit. You're like, as soon as she walks in, you're like, oh, yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. That.
ah,
Yeah.
that's
That's
Helly.
Helly. Obviously. That's Helly. Not that other
Not
one.
that other one. This is it. And as soon as she did the walk down the hall, I was like, there's that walk.
Yeah, there's the walk.
I don't know what Britt Lauer does with Helly R's walk, but it is different from Helena's. And it is like so like stomp,
Yeah.
stomp, but it's not oafish or cloddish, but it's
Yeah.
like very purposeful steps.
On a mission.
Mm-hmm. And I was just watching her walk behind Miss Wong, and I was like, there's that walk. There it is. I don't know.
It's true.
I don't know what she did or how she found that body posture, but it is solid and it is distinctly Helly. So okay, first of all, the amount of foreign nomenclatures and words that Lumon leadership has. We've got, what was the other one that we just said earlier that Mr. Drummond said?
Oh,
The completon.
contretemps.
I was like, what? And then now we've got Groschapen. And I'm like, how do y'all know? Why do y'all know all these words?
Right.
Everyone just happens to have all this foreign knowledge. And I'm just like, okay, sure. But I did find it interesting that when I looked up the word, the literal translation of it is gray matter. And I was like, well, that makes sense because this is all probably just like hodgepodge of stories. It's like, this is kind of true. This is kind of not. It's all gray.
Yeah.
No black
It's
and white.
interesting because when I looked it up, I saw gray bonnet. And so I was like, he just said like gray cloak because that sounded better. But so it's something, it's, well, you know, it's gray and then something. There's probably, it's one of those words that doesn't have a direct translation, probably.
Right.
But it did make me think of like that show, Undercover Boss, that terrible CBS show. I hated that
You
show
did?
because it was like, it was so patronizing. And I always wondered, I was like, they never do follow-ups because I always wanted to know like what actually happened after. Oh, heard the worker's story and then gave them all this stuff, and look how great I look as a CEO now. But like, what is the overall satisfaction of working there after all of this?
Right. Did that change their job quality, their
did
job
change
environment?
Anything? Does that person from the TV show still work there? That the person that talked about how all their hardship, what their hardships are.
I always thought it was wild that they would just isolate one person that's like, okay, we're going to pay better.
Right.
And we're going to do it because you treated me kindly and blah, blah, blah. It's like, what about all the other people that do her job and don't get paid? She just happened to be the one you encountered.
Exactly. It was just like, here's the person that has like a good sob story for TV, but also, again, what happened after?
Exactly.
They still there 6 months later? They still getting paid what they got paid for this episode?
Or how do you know other employees aren't going in to try to leverage like, hey, y'all gave Barbara a raise just because she handed the CEO a candy bar?
Right.
I do the same thing Barbara does every day. Sometimes twice a day. Where's my raise?
Right. Yeah. It was just not realistic. I was like, this is so phony.
You're a phony. Yeah. I found it amusing. I just found it entertaining because it's just like some of the stories. I was like, wow, these people are so detached from the reality of their workers and what they do every day. It is patronizing at the end of the day, but it also was just like,
yeah,
okay, that out of touch. Wow. So before we move on, it's just because we're in the office now and we got to see it. I wanted to give a shout out to one of our Spotify listeners, Not Your Mama, who helped me finally figure out what's on Milchick's desk. You guys.
Yes.
My eyes have been opened because of this person. I'm so grateful. So they replied in our comments and told us that it's the duck rabbit optical illusion thing. You would see like the drawings of where it's like, is it a duck or is it a rabbit? And I was like,
that's that. Yeah. Oh. As soon as I read the comment, I was like, yes, that's it. I like screenshot it, showed her.
You're like, she found it. Was like, or he or who, I don't know, whoever this is, not your mom. But this person found it. And I just was like, okay, I can sleep easy now. That's one less mystery out of the way.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting my mind at ease, Not Your Mama. I appreciate it. It's one less mystery for me. And I was going to lose my mind if I couldn't figure it out before the season ended. So thank you. All right. We ready to move on? I'm ready.
Yeah.
All right.
So Milchick escorts them back to MDR and they find that the room has been adjusted to erase Irving fully. The fourth desk is gone and they are arranged in a tri arrangement, and the team photo has Irving removed. Mark immediately sits down to work, and a very spicy Dylan continues to berate Milchick. But Milchick responds, "Careful, Dylan. Words have consequences. I'd hate to have to rescind certain privileges." Mark picks up on this hint and looks over at Dylan, who quickly shifts the attention by requesting that they have a funeral for Irving, not a retirement party.
Mhm.
And Milchick looks to Mark to make it official, and Mark says, "Sure, as long as it's quick." And Dylan and Helly look at him incredulously. After Milchick leaves, Mark begins to cough uncontrollably, while an annoyed Milchick radios Miss Wong to ready the bereavement kit. Because of course, there's
Of
already a
course,
kit
there's a
for
kid.
her.
Of course.
So Mark goes to the bathroom, and Helly then barges in on him the way he used to with her and asks if he's okay. And Mark is very hesitant to engage with her. Helly is surprised that Mark couldn't tell that it was her and asks what her outie was like. And he says, like you, I don't know, I guess you were like her or whatever. And Helly gets offended and says, "You know who I am," and tries to defend the fact that she is the person Mark knows and it's not her fault what happened. And then she asks, "What happened to you up there, Mark?" And Mark walks away saying it doesn't matter. And she asks him if he wants to know what happened to her. And he just says no. So then we see Miss Swong and Milchick preparing a banner and paraphernalia for Irving's funeral. And Miss Swong questions Milchick at every step of the way, starting by clarifying that funerals are supposed to be for innies who have died on the floor, following by offering her unsolicited opinion that he shouldn't allow the innies to have a funeral, stating it will make them think they're people. Finally, she asks about his performance review being that day, and this gets under Milchick's skin, and he leaves her to finish the mournful signage alone.
Oh, so we've got this new space. Our old space has been
Mhm.
renovated, but not really. So this is interesting because I remember last episode after, Woe's Hollow, we were like, are they going to erase their memories so that they don't even remember Irving, or are they going to
Right.
leave it? But it's like, it's so weird because they told Irving, like, it'll be as if you never existed, but they remember him. But it's just like, but we're just going to
Yeah.
pluck him out of all these spaces. So clearly they don't plan on getting a
Right.
fourth person to complete all of the project files, which I do find interesting because I'm like, is my theory not my theory in that you need all four to
With
kind
the
of temper
tempers.
balance? We're just going to try it with
Yeah.
three. And I don't know if that's because they're just so focused on Cold Harbor now that they're like, whatever, it doesn't even matter. We'll
Right.
fix it after, maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm still of the belief that the plan is once Cold Harbor is done, they're all
Oh,
gone
sure,
anyway.
sure.
Then we start fresh.
That makes sense.
So maybe it's just like we don't really care about any other files that may have been completed at this during this time.
Right.
Sure, if they complete some other ones, great, but Cold Harbor is
That's the
focus.
focus. That makes sense. It's interesting how removing that fourth desk made, like, they're all still connected, but at the same time, it almost feels like they're just off on a limb on their own. Like they aren't as locked into each
Yeah,
other.
because it's not meant to fit together, right? So there has to be that weird
Yeah.
space in the middle for it to
Yeah.
work. And I agree with Dylan, it's gross. I was like, ew, I don't like it. Something about it makes me itch. I don't
It
like it.
looked like, a fan or like, the
Yeah.
beginning of like a turbine or something with the three prongs.
Yeah.
Like I was just waiting for it to start spinning.
Yeah.
Definitely feels more isolating, which I find
Yeah.
interesting because I'm like, it's just one less desk. But like you said, it's like for it to work,
Right.
there has to be kind of a detachment in a way, which again
Right.
points to where all of our innies stand right now. Like everyone's kind of off on their own little island dealing with their own
Hmm.
thing, and there's not the unity that we had.
Right. And to that end, I did a whole lot of yelling at my TV during this moment
Okay.
of wanting them to just share and be open and get back to where they were and just like get everyone up to speed. I was like wanting Dylan, obviously not right in this moment, but I was like, you got to tell him, Dylan, you got to tell him about the Audi visitation suite and all of the things that Milchick is trying to pull. And you got to tell him about what Irving told you. And
Yeah.
Mark, you got to tell her you slept with her Audi. You cannot. It's just as her Audi tricking you into sex is just as bad as you not telling her that your bodies had sex. Like you gotta tell her. And I was just like yelling at the TV so much at this point.
Your reaction, this is a
Mhm.
bit of a tangent, but not. Your reaction to this is my reaction when I watch like certain reality shows, like 90 Day
Yes.
Fiance or like A Love is Blind, where it's like, why don't they just talk? Just open your
Just
mouth
talk.
and talk to each other. If
Just
y'all just
say
talk, this wouldn't be a problem. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it is frustrating because again, it's like all these little secrets that everybody's holding on to that is basically just fraying at the edges, right? It's like
yeah.
Dylan's trying to hold on to this Audi visitation thing I can't tell anybody, but also me not telling anybody is clearly creating a block. And then
Right.
Mark and his whole like, I slept with the CEO who's destroying our lives and nothing is what I think anymore. And I just got to hold that to myself. And Helly's the only one who, she doesn't have a present secret, but the secret of her being vegan is creating a barrier to everybody else. And all she wants to do is talk about it, but nobody wants to talk to her.
Well, and then she's in a space of she has missed the catch up and she's trying desperately to catch up and nobody will catch her up.
It's so awkward too, because I'm like, we've all been following Helena going through all the catch up. And now it's like, oh, wait, no, you didn't experience any of that. We all know it, but you don't know it. And how are you going to find it out? Nobody want to talk to you.
Right.
Oh, that's frustrating.
Yeah.
Oh, sucks.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to figure out how long is it going to take before Mark figures out what Dylan's secret is, because he done caught those looks between him and Milchick twice.
Yes.
So the last scene when he was in the office and he had that little excuse me moment to Dylan, and Mark kind of looks like, what was that? Why are y'all looking at each other like that? And then it happens again right now. And Mark's the first one to flag it. And he's just like, what? Why you keep looking at each other? What is happening?
Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those things where there's no way he could possibly guess what the truth is. And so his mind is going to spin it to be something negative if Dylan doesn't speak up, right? Because what positive could it be where there's stolen looks between your coworker and the manager who you guys are supposed to be all against, right? You know, it's got to be like, oh, they're in cahoots, right? He's going to be assuming the worst if Dylan doesn't correct it up front.
Exactly. Given the experience he just had with Helena, it's like, wait, I've already let one person in who ended up being not who they appeared to be. And now you're having eyes with the boss that we all hated at one point. And now all of a sudden he's able to just get you to shut up whenever. So now y'all are in cahoots too. So is nobody who I think they are anymore? Yeah.
Yeah.
If only somebody would just lead the group therapy session, for crying out loud. Let's just all get it out there. We need Miss Casey back. We need Miss Casey. All right, everybody collectively share your trauma and let us all appreciate it equally. Okay. We listen and we don't judge. We need one of those sessions. Oh, okay. I wanted to get into it now before we get too far, because I didn't get into it last episode, and I have to acknowledge it, especially now in the return. Britt Lauer, the acting task that she has been given for this first half of the season, and obviously it's going to continue to go on, but we don't know where the Helena thing will go from here. But I just commend her commitment to both of these individual roles, and also the crazy job she had to do of flirting the line between one and the other and like blurring it to where no one can really settle into what we're seeing, and how she did that without really fully giving it away, but also smart enough to make these distinct choices between what is Helena and what is Helly, how they walk, how they talk, how they present, how they address things. I was like, that is a task. That is quite a task. And to be so clear about who is who, and be able to try to like offer those hints, but obviously not over indicate it. That's hard.
Right.
That is not easy to do. And I just had to tip my hat, because I was just like, I am hella impressed with this woman. Everybody already knows they have duality, right? They already know we have an outie person and an innie person. And this is what my outie does. This is what my innie does. I know that. But to have to be the outie pretending to be the innie without giving away that she's an outie, and trying to master the things that make her her. But I have to act like I don't really know how to play that, even though I know exactly how to play that, because I play that when I'm not playing this.
Yes.
And so flawlessly executed. That is not something every actor can do. I'm sorry. I know we all believe that we can do anything. That's a very narcissistic trait of actors. We all think we can do everything and anything, but it's not true. Not everybody can do that. Again, without giving it away or getting unclear about who you are at what time, right? Because you have to be so specific. I know that Helena has a shoulder tick because, you know, she stands like this most of the time, and I don't, whatever the choices may be.
And you can just tell by how flawlessly it's executed that there are probably notes upon notes upon notes that she has made herself that never even enter what we've seen, right? It's just all that character building in her head and in her body, right? That's not like a specific, like, oh, I need to make a point to show that Helena does this thing and Helly doesn't do this thing. You know, it's just informs her overall performance. There's no way she didn't do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm so impressed. And then again, to see her come back as Helly and now have to be this person who is in the wake of this disaster that happened without them. And again, to be so clearly put back into the person that she was before without missing a beat. Like we said earlier, all those familiar mannerisms, the way she speaks, the way she addresses things. I even noticed later, which remember was one of my tells with episode 2 or 1, I can't remember anymore, when like the way she would grab Irving's hand to comfort him, or like when they were in the room, like telling what happened in their outie world, and she'd be like, I'm here for you, da da da. And when they have the moment later in the break room, when they do the funeral, I'm just bringing it up now to make the point, and Dylan says something, and when it's after he does his eulogy, when he goes to sit down, she looks at him like, I want to touch you, but I don't need to do that. She just kind of, I'm not gonna. She just kind of looks like, yeah. And I was like, those are the things where like Helena probably would have been like, oh, so lovely, Dylan. Thank you, or whatever. Whereas Helly is not emotionally restrained, but respects boundaries because her boundaries are so important to her. It's those things that you have to be clear about when you're building a character, and you got to build two, and then their worlds cross. Anyway, I'm done. All right. I just needed.
Give her all the awards. Moral of the story: give him all to her. If she don't clean sweep in the next award season, she was wrong.
Rigged.
Okay,
rigged. We calling it now. It was rigged. Sidebar: did you know that she performs in the circus?
No, but why is that like not a surprise?
It's not a surprise to me either.
Like, I'm like, oh, hearing you say that, I'm like, I can see it. Yeah, that's so funny.
It's crazy. But again, that just shows all of these performance things. Like I think about all these classes I've taken where they talk about like clowning and miming, which seems silly because of the way they've been portrayed in pop culture. But like really all of it has to do with physicality and understanding your body and being intentional about your body communication when you don't have your words, right?
Yeah.
And so, like you said, it doesn't surprise me at all that she's doing circus performance, because she clearly has a great grasp of her body and how to command it to inform and instruct without having to speak.
Amazing.
Bravo, girl. Bravo. We stand Britt Lauer. All right. Anything else?
Yeah. So this whole exchange in the storage room, right, between Miss Wong and Milchick. First of all, Innies have died on the floor. Bereavement ceremonies are normally reserved for Innies who have died on the floor. I almost had to pause because I was like, wait a minute. The fact, well, one, that you already have a protocol and a checklist for bereavement ceremony, because this is very different from a retirement party. You have two separate protocols. What are you? Why,
and it happens enough that you have to make a distinguishment between the two.
Right. How, why, when has somebody died on the floor?
Well, now,
in a way that was not secretive. You know what I mean? This wasn't like, oh, something happened to you in the break room. Because if that were the case, it would probably be, they would just make an excuse for an abrupt dismissal like Petey, right? It has to be in a way that the other people that Innie is working with know about it, because then they need a bereavement ceremony. What?
I mean, well, now let's think about the departments we've been exposed to, right? Outside of MDR, we've got O&D, where they're making God knows what in them labs. Who knows if stuff is exploding or stuff ain't
accidents.
And most people don't even know of the rest of the team outside of the two mains, formerly Bert and Felicia. I guess now it's Felicia and Elizabeth.
Right.
So could be that. We now know about Mamalia's nurturable. Or people getting
animal accidents. What the heck?
And these are the departments that we know of. But like you said, clearly, and I had the same reaction, was like, all right, how many people are dying down here?
Right? Like one time you wing it, a second time you're like, we can do what we did last time. A third time, now we need to, onward. Oh, we need a protocol. So we know a step by step and we do this the right way. What?
Yeah. Wild.
Yeah.
So let's talk, Miss Wong. What's up with this girl? What do we think is going on with her?
How is she so menacing? And how does she know how to play that type of game that she is playing, right? How does she know how to play the mind game that she is playing with Milchick?
I've said it before and I'll say it again, because she ain't a child.
She ain't no child.
No child. And I can't wait till they reveal it. But either way, it is crazy to see just the underhandedness, like how she just comes right up under to kind of like, tip the scales without, overtly trying to seize control. And then that's my other question too. Is like, is she trying to unseat Milchick? Does she want to be head of the severed floor? What's her
Right.
angle? What's the goal?
Yeah.
Because clearly her and Milchick don't see eye to eye. Clearly they are at odds with one another.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's just someone she would prefer to be in charge, or if she herself would prefer to be in charge.
Right, because it definitely seems like just the way she challenged him in this scene seems like she holds more traditional Lumen
Yes.
ideas about innies and how things should be done and how they should be dealt with. I wonder if she knew of
I knew you were going to say, you
Cobell
beat me
or
to
if
it.
she,
I was thinking the same
yeah,
thing.
like is she like, I wish I had the opportunity to work under her because she would be doing this the right way.
I was thinking, I was like, I wonder, yeah, if it was that, or if maybe she is connected to Cobell and is just
Some
secretly
way.
working
Yeah.
to upend Milchick so that
Ooh,
Cobell can get back in there.
yeah.
I don't
Right.
know.
She's her little spy on the inside.
Could be. But
Interesting.
yeah, like you said, clearly her and Cobell are more aligned in how they see the floor being run, which
Hmm.
clearly is a more traditional approach for Lumen. And we'll circle back to that later. That comes up again. But
Yeah.
it's just the first thing that she said that had to do with like, they shouldn't get a funeral. Like,
They
can I
shouldn't get a
ask a
funeral, and that
question?
wasn't a
Yeah.
question. Hmm.
And he's like, and it was,
And it was funny because she said, "Can I say a question?"
she
Not ask.
did. She did. And he's like, that wasn't a
I thought
question.
that was
It was an
interesting. Yeah.
opinion unsolicited.
Right. Unsolicited
I love
opinion.
a sassy Milchick. I
You're,
love a sassy
yeah.
Milchick.
Right. And then the whole like, your first performance review is today, isn't it? That's a question. I said, oh,
And I
no, she
know
didn't.
in that moment, Milchick said, don't shake a baby. I was like, those are one of those moments. If anyone's ever been a teacher or worked with children,
Walk away.
yep, where they say that one thing that you're like, I can't hit a child. I should
Not
not hit a child.
today,
I
Satan.
will not hit a child. I
Mm-mm.
will not throw you out the window. I won't do it.
Not worth touching a case. It's not worth it.
And that was that moment for him where he said, I know this little girl did, you know what? You finished the mournful signage by yourself,
Yeah.
since you know so
So
much, since you
funny.
so smart. Uh,
Yeah.
so I'm curious to see where her character goes.
Yeah. I also have another question about just this area that I didn't write down because I just thought of
Okay.
it. As they are readying all the things for the funeral, Milchick is scrolling through the cups to find Irving's mug, and you see that there's a mug for everyone, including Helly, which makes me have the question, do they use these mugs for different ceremonies, or are they prepared for anybody needing a ceremony, even
Even the boss.
our head of company in waiting,
Oh, yes,
right?
yes, yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
This golden child, this very important person, you're not gonna do everything in your power to make sure she doesn't need a bereavement
the
ceremony,
reality is that I feel like once you come down to the severed floor, all bets are off, even you.
right?
So it's probably one of those things where
Yeah.
it's like you sever at your own risk. And I'm sure they will probably do as much as they can. But I think it's one of
Mm-hmm.
those things where it's like, but the greater good might dictate that you might be a casualty, which I'm sure is not a reality that they reveal to her.
Right.
But
Ooh, which takes us back to our discussion that we had previously. Did we think Helena knew everything that goes on down there when she
yes,
chose to be severed?
yes,
She didn't have the access to the floor that she has now, as far as like tapes and whatnot, and she didn't give
right,
informed consent.
right. Sheesh. So, okay. All right, let's go on to this funeral. All right. So we arrive at the funeral, which is in the new and improved break room with a sign that says Irving B, quarter 870 to quarter 882. And it is hanging above Milchick's head as he provides insight that this is a special exception to help them transition. So he brings Dylan G up to give the eulogy, which had me dead.
Yes. Oh, so it was so Dylan.
And he starts by saying he put the dick in contradiction. And then he sums up by saying he was awesome and I miss him. And I love Milchick's response to that, which is, thank you, Dylan. A little sugar with your usual salt, because that pretty much
Yeah,
is Dylan.
it was true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mr. Milchick then has Miss Wong wheel in the melon bar, where the centerpiece is a watermelon shaped into Irving's likeness. As Miss Wong prepares to play the theremin, Mr. Milchick eschews the idea by asking her to come along. The theremin works best in moderation. She is clearly upset by this. She practiced. So back inside, Helly asks Dylan if he's okay, to which he shrugs and returns the question. A bothered Mark sees this conversation going and then decides to down his melon and prepare to leave. Helly looks up and cannot believe that Mark is just going to walk out and go back to work as if none of this has happened. But Dylan says to just let him go. Helly asks to Mark, Irving was your friend and he's dead. Why don't you give a and Mark responds that he's not dead, he's just not here. This angers Dylan, and he intentionally outs Mark about Miss Casey being his outie's wife, which they have not told Helly are. So Mark storms out and Helly follows, asking why he won't talk to her and what are they going to do about Miss Casey and that she'll help, whatever you want to do. I'm willing to help. Despite her willingness to help, Mark stops her and says that none of it matters because Lumon is smarter and they know everything they've been doing. The looking for Miss Casey, wandering the halls, mapping the floor, going to Mamalia's nurture, all of it, because Helena told them everything. And Helly stands up for herself by saying, I'm not her. And Mark responds, how do I know that? And Helly says that he'll just have to trust her. And with that, she walks away.
Mm-hmm.
Intense. Oh.
Wow. I immediately was like, Rodnesha was right about the fruit head. I just went back to that conversation we had where you pointed out that it's Irving because I just assumed it was here. Like, and then I was like, oh no, that means something bad is going to happen. You were right. It did. Something terrible has happened to Irving.
Terrible has happened.
And this is why this head is here. And I was like, oh no.
I could not foresee what, but yeah, this is definitely, that would warrant the watermelon. What kind of watermelon did he say it was? I did look it up. It's like a black something from Malaysia.
He said it was
he was like, enjoy this watermelon. Because he said the black of the hair to mimic Irving's is provided by the such and such watermelon from Malaysia. And I looked it up because I was like, is he BSing again? Is he... And it turns out to actually be true. So I was like, see, this is the thing with Milchick. It's like, there are things that are true and then there are things that are not. And you never know when he's lying.
Just enough of it. Yeah. You don't know.
So I noticed that same screen that they would put the compunction speech up on, that they've now, because they left the handprint part there that they would make the innies put their hands on. They didn't repaint that or take it off. See, this is how they be gaslighting people.
It's just a reminder that it's not gone. It can come back at any point.
Dual purpose. But I just love that it had, again, the little 80s video graphic of Irving from the Music Dance Experience doing his little shuffle in front of a red curtain. I was just like, it's so funny and also sad. But I have laughed a lot. And Dylan's eulogy.
Yeah, the eulogy was pretty funny. The bit about him accidentally taking a sip of the toner water that Irving gave him to prove a point, like, because he told me about it. He didn't want me to get hurt.
It's the delivery that Zach Cherry does that sells it, because it could just be any old speech and it still would be funny because it's written funny, but the way he delivers it, where he's like, he did stop me before I drank it though, because he wanted to make a point. He didn't want to harm me physically, but I did accidentally take a sip later because I forgot that he said that. Zach Cherry, always with the line delivery. There's not much in the funeral part to say. I did find it funny how much they made Milchick look like a preacher up at in front of a pulpit, like with the little podium. And I was like, in the suit, I was like, oh, he looked like he about to rev up. It looked like he was about to preach.
Oh goodness.
I didn't write this in because I think I might go into this in a separate something, maybe on the socials, because I got to think through it some more. But the banner, I thought it was interesting that they did denote the quarter numbers, right? That Irving was there. And initially I just broke it down and was like, oh, 4 years, right? Like I think the amount of quarters broke down to like
3 years.
3 years?
It's 12 quarters.
12. I did the math wrong. Yep. Yeah. So I was like, it's 12 quarters and nope, that's 4 quarters in a year, not 3 quarters in a year. There it is. Okay. This is why I'm an actor, people. I don't do math.
I deal with data for a living.
There you go. See, there's the difference. There's the difference. Yeah. So 3 years. So that's the main thing I thought. But then someone at my job was asking me about, oh, so now we know what year it is. And I was like, how? And they're like, well, because if there's 820 quarters, then we can do the math backwards to the founding of Lumon and blah, 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 blah. How? But
oh my God.
Don't get excited though, because we did that math and the math ain't mathing.
Oh, okay.
And that's what I wanted.
What? I never even thought
That's what I wanted to talk about separately, because then it made me have to try to do some lining up between the details that we got about Cobell and like all these other date points. And it don't match.
Okay.
So the ultimate thing that I came to the conclusion of is like, either they are lying about when a quarter is a quarter, like we're thinking of it in the traditional sense that we know, which is a calendar year, and There's four
Right.
quarters in a year, but they don't know nothing about no years and calendars. So a quarter could just be whenever they say it's a new quarter. We don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
A quarter could be every month.
Right.
We don't know. So that's the thing is I'm like, when I did the math and the dates weren't syncing up to what we know of the characters and stuff that's been provided, it's like either they're lying about these quarters or what they call a quarter is not what we would call a quarter, or they're lying about the founding of the company, or at least when they started dating, or whatever it is, it ain't adding up.
You know, I'm fighting the urge to like whip out my calculator right
Yeah,
now too,
yeah.
but you already did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I invite you and I invite the rest of you all who are listening to do the math yourself. And if you maybe have some insight into where the gap could be in the mathing, because again, as I just stated, I don't math. Now I do math with a calculator. So I did I did do it right in that regard. But if you maybe can explain why it doesn't quite sync up with a timeline that we've been exposed to so far,
Yeah.
or, you know, if you have theories about that, I present that to you guys to figure out.
Right. We also have the Egan family timeline
Exactly.
from the perpetuity wing. Oh, which we haven't shared.
Oh, we still haven't. You're
That's
right.
got to come. Yeah.
Oh, we got to get that one out and the pilot too. Man, oh man, we got a lot to do, y'all.
Oh, the pilot is so fun.
It's so
Yeah.
fun. I still think
Sorry,
about it.
we've gone off on a
We did.
tangent. Back to the conversation about the previous scene. It's just wild to me that Milchick is even in a position where he has to pull something like this to assert his dominance over a child.
It's so
you know
funny.
what I mean? Like the Theremin bit was 100% to get back at her and
Absolutely.
like tell her like who's in charge.
Absolutely.
It's so petty and just so ridiculous that he has to play these games with a child, which I know again that ain't no child, but it's just wild.
But and she's like, but I practice. He's like, you can play it for me later.
Yeah, you played for me.
She's like, I don't want to play for you.
Can you imagine just like she's just working and he's just waiting for a time where she thinks nothing is going to happen and she's just at the desk outside his office and then he's like, Miss Wong, ready the theremin. I'd love to hear what you practiced. Right. And she's just like in his office playing for him alone. So funny.
She's like, the tone is not appropriate. It doesn't work in this setting. Oh.
Right. And then another thing I had was when Dylan asked if Helly and Mark had caught up yet, and there was a pause right before he revealed the Miss Casey thing. I forgot all about the fact that she wasn't there for the Miss Casey stuff. I was like, oh, Dylan heard the bang bang. I thought Dylan was about to say that they slept together.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, Dylan knows what happens. He heard what was going on in the tent. And then that's not what he said. But I was like, oh, I wonder if he knows.
I thought that too. I was like, it wouldn't surprise me because again, I don't think tents are soundproof and they out there in the woods hunching. So I would not be surprised if he did. And I thought for a second that's what he was going to say too. And I was going to be like, oh.
No. I mean, it's still messy, just not as messy as I thought is where it was going.
Yeah.
And then the last thing was the exchange about like, why don't you care about Irving? It's just like parallels that same conversation about your friend is gone. You're supposed to be his friend and you don't care about Petey, you know? And I was just like, oh, it's happening all over again.
No, you're absolutely right. It is echoing itself. And Mark has to be flooded with a lot of conflicting emotions right now, right? Mm-hmm. Like we still haven't fully gotten over the Petey thing, you know? He still hasn't properly like put that in its place, but he found something distracting enough to take his mind off of it. And now that thing has been compromised. And it's just like, dang it, Lumon, I can't have no peace up in this place. Y'all ruin everything, every relationship I have. And now Irving's gone.
Yep.
Wah, wah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, that is all I had about the funeral.
Okay.
So next, it's time for a performance review. So before Milchick steps in for what he knows will be a challenging performance review, he asks to speak to Natalie separately about the painting. And he reveals that while he is grateful, his feelings for such a gift are complicated, and he's wondering if she felt the same way, given that they have shared similar experiences in a lot of ways. AKA, you black on black, what you think? And so Natalie's eyes get glassy but remain restrained as she simply stares back at him. And just when Milchick is feeling he may be in this alone, she nods, and then she turns on that smile again and she says, Mr. Drummond's waiting. Meanwhile, Dylan sits alone in the break room staring at Irvin's fruit head, and he apologizes for letting Irv down, and he turns to leave. And when he does, he realizes he's face to face with the hang in there poster and remembers Irving's final words to him on the portico. Dylan approaches the posters and searches the back with his hands until he finds a folded piece of paper. He opens it and it starts with "From Dad." Oh my God. Followed by a series of turns that will direct Dylan G to the exports hall. And then back at Milchick's review, a very stern Mr. Drummond gives the rundown of how the meeting will go. And Mr. Drummond says after 4 hours, lunch will be provided if it's going to go longer than that. And Milchick says he hopes it won't take that long. And Mr. Drummond pushes a menu towards him. The pre-selected lunch will occur at 4 hours. Here's your menu. Choose it now.
Mm-hmm.
So they start with the pros, which are far less compared to the cons. And he starts by saying they received 3 anonymous complaints. One being he uses too many big words. Apparently, this is from Miss Wong, why she was so eager to be like, is it your
Performance
review
review today.
Then finally, he's reprimanded for failing with the 5X team and instituting kindness reforms and the more recent Ortbo disaster, of course. So Mr. Milchick asserts that he is not Harmony Cobell, but Mr. Drummond cares not because his kindness reforms did not deter any curiosity or rebellion. And the Ortbo nearly got their legacy CEO killed, and far worse, her identity has been exposed. He goes on to say that Mark's completion of Cold Harbor will be remembered as one of the greatest moments in the history of the planet and will take place under his stewardship, which is quite the legacy. However, he advises Seth to remember that these severed workers have a greater purpose and to treat them as what they really are. As Mr. Drummond says all this, the scene cuts back and forth between Mark working on the Cold Harbor file and Milchick reflecting on his performance review, which apparently did go on for hours based on the position of the sun when he exits. And he looks stressed but determined. When we cut back to Mark, he's sitting at his desk when suddenly his head begins to constrain. He looks over at his team photo and it glitches to Audi Mark's pills from that morning. He shakes it off and he sees that it's nearly 5 and decides to head home. At that moment, Milchick assures Mr. Drummond that he's tightening the leash.
This section had me stressed for so many different reasons. I will just first and foremost say that when he got his first contention complaint, whatever, and it said uses too many big words, I literally said, oh, that's me. And then the fact that he responded and says, well, perchance I may colloquially, I was like, oh, Milchick, no, you already messing up.
You can't answer the complaint about big words with big words.
Oh, and I felt that in my spirit. I was like, oh, he's not trying. They just come out. I understand. They just
come out.
It was so easy for me in season 1 to know where to place Milchick. Bad guy who try to act like he's your friend. We don't like him.
Yep.
And while I still mostly hold to that, there are more and more layers that just make me like, oh man, I get it. I don't get it, but I get it. Because when he had that performance review, if anyone, first of all, has sat through a performance review, it's not fun. And then like you can tell that he is trying, right? And it's just like, yeah, but none of your ideas work and none of them are helpful. And don't do your thing. We don't like your thing. We hate it. It sucks. And it's just like, geez, like
the whole bit about the kindness reforms and him making a point to be like, I'm not Miss Cobell, just confirmed that this was coming from a place of good intention. It was less manipulative than I think we assumed initially, right? He genuinely was like, you attract more flies with honey. Let me be nicer and make these reforms and they'll be happier for it and
we get what we want.
Will perform better. Nope.
Yeah.
Didn't work.
Yeah. It just sucks because, again, I think back to the conversation we had last week where I was like, is Milchick a good manager maybe? Yeah. And you can see like, okay, he was trying. It's like within the confines of Lumon and within what I am capable of executing, I do want to try to be a different type of leader. I don't want to do it the Harmony Cobell way. I don't want to lead by fear and violence and terrorism, right? I want to try to do something different. And then to have it fail so bad, it's just like, dang, oh, that sucks. And just the way Mr. Drummond made him feel so small. I think that's what was kind of resonating with me during those moments. Like throughout other points in the show, you want to see Milchick get taken down a peg, but not necessarily by these guys, by like the innies, right? You want to see them get the upper on him. But then to have this guy from above who's worse than him and wants to exact things on this team in a worse way, come down on him and make him feel so small. Oh, my insides were just like, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that anymore. I don't feel good about that. I think I thought a lot about coming off the heels of Super Bowl Sunday and the Kendrick performance and the
Mm-hmm.
whole Uncle Sam bit. And just those
Yeah.
moments in there where, Uncle Sam, played by Samuel L. Jackson, if you didn't watch it, is saying to Kendrick, you don't know how to play the game. Do it right. You can't be so ghetto. You can't be so outlandish. You can't be so colorful. You can't be
Too
so bold,
loud.
too loud, to this, to that. And that is what my brain went back to. So it's just kind of fortuitous, the timing. But that is what my brain went back to in that moment. It was like, it's that thing of like, you're doing too much. You don't know how to play the game. And then to have Natalie sitting there in the corner to try to echo that statement of like, this is how you play the game. What you're doing, that's not going to get you far. Be more like Natalie. Smile, do things our way.
She didn't chime in at any point for this part, right? She's just sitting there obedient, doing what she's supposed to do, taking her notes.
And he's like, that's what we want from you. Just do what we say.
The model Negro.
Exactly. Don't try to do things your way. Nobody asked for that. We let you do things your way. We're removing DEI. Like we try to do it your way. Jesus. We're going back to what we know. I keep bringing that stuff. It's just because it's so prominent right now.
I know.
But it is resonant, right? It's like, listen, we tried to let the Black guy do his thing, be nice, whatever, give him fruit. I don't know. It ain't working. All right. Let's just go back to instilling fear.
Yeah.
Because that's the Lumon way. Gaslight, gaslight, gaslight. That's what works. All right. And if you want to have a place here, you'll do things the way we want. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just was like cringe. Right. Cringe. Yeah.
I feel like the graphic design of this performance review booklet that they receive is maybe to help soften the blow of all of the terrible things that are in it.
It just made it bigger and more colorful.
It's real fancy in design. Right. I was like, oh, well, it's a nice little book.
It is.
I loved it, though. It's so extra. I loved it. I thought it was hilarious that the Ortbo page said calamitous Ortbo. That was complaint number 3.
I did see that. The fact, like you said, the fact that they gave it to him in this very palatable, like, we are just pointing out your very obvious flaws, but in a very palatable way that, it's colorful, it's digestible, it's easy to read, it's very succinct,
right?
No big words. Okay, so even you can understand.
Yeah, it's not just a cold document. Time and energy went into this to show you that we care.
We want you to enjoy equally the many pages that confer your disastrous management. Please enjoy them equally. It's just terrible.
Oh, well, cycling back towards the beginning of this section, Sydney Cole Alexander, again, this exchange was just another like, I can't talk because we don't got the time and they're always listening, but here's a look to show you you're not wrong in what you're thinking here. Yeah, it was effed up. Yes. But that's all you're going to get from me.
As much as you're going to get from me. No.
Right. And it's just, again,
I want to keep my job.
Much, right. So much with so little. And she just like, if you bring this up again, please don't bring this up again. I thought the moment that I gave you
was enough
in your office was enough to know that like, you're not alone. But like, we have to play the game and you're not playing it right now by even bringing this up to me because we can both get fired for this
immediately, expeditiously, right now.
Right. Right. So cut it. Like she said so much with so little.
Yeah. And again, it just shows how much Milchick is trying to reach for an anchor in the midst of all this. Like now that he's getting into the upper tiers of this, like we're getting a little past middle management, right?
Yeah.
And now is when it's like when you get into the inner workings of something, it's like, oh, now I'm really seeing how the sausage gets made. And I need a lifeline to kind of anchor myself to, because I'm getting a little lost in the weeds here and I'm not crazy, am I? And it's like, at no real turn could he really get a grasp on anything. And Natalie's like the closest he can ask for, but even she's like, nah, Negro, don't count on me to save you. This is what it is.
Kinfolk ain't always kinfolk, Milchick.
You better sink or swim.
Right.
This is crabs in a bucket mentality. And if I got to step on your head to get out, no, that's what I will do. That's what I've done so far to get here. You don't even know the amount of bodies that have been buried underfoot. Don't reach for me. Oh my goodness. Don't reach for me.
I would like an idioms count for this conversation. Just how many Blackisms, idioms did we just use just now?
So many.
If anyone is confused in the translation, hit us up. Anyway.
Do we have much else to say about Natalie?
Oh, no.
So yeah, so then we go back to Dylan and
Rodnesha's right again.
I was just glad that they didn't, because I thought they were going to string that out for at least another episode or two. And I was like, thank God. They gave us the answer now. Okay.
Yeah.
Because as soon as they went into the break room to have the funeral, I was like, they're with the poster.
Yeah.
It's happening. It's happening.
Yeah. I was expecting there was going to have to be some moment where he remembers the poster and then has to figure out how he's going to sneak in there.
Exactly. That's what I was
But
thinking. I was
this
like,
is
is he going to,
perfect.
I'm thinking he's going to grab a hall pass at some point. It's going to dawn on him and maybe he just
Hmm.
goes down there. I wasn't sure how he was going to get there, but then they had that. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, well, that worked out well. Oh, I loved that it said from dad
Oh my gosh.
for multiple reasons, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Dad of the group, but then he'd always call them kids. What's for dinner,
Kids.
kids? Hey, kids,
Yeah.
what's for dinner? I want Irving back.
Yeah. But then also I was like, yes, Felicia did tell, at least told him, but maybe even showed him, right,
Maybe,
how to get
hopefully.
there. And the instructions were just like right, then
Right,
a long
left,
down,
left.
then a long hallway, then left, then four more lefts, and then a right, and then you make a turn, and then another long hallway, and then at the end of a very long hallway, this.
I'm just waiting for him to try to go down that way and miss one turn and end up like in the monster room or something crazy.
Right? Or if he finds the baby goats that he thinks are not real.
Baby goats was
Ah, not
not sex
sex
with
with
Mark S.
Marcus.
Oh, I want that now. Oh boy. But yeah, this whole section, stressed,
Hmm.
just stressed. My
Hmm.
brain was just like, oh, I can't handle this. It's too much tension because they get to the end of this and right, we see Milchick sitting out there and he literally looks like he wants to cry, which that was another moment
Yeah.
that got me because I was like, damn, they're really getting to your boy. They found the soft underbelly and said, gut, like he's really feeling the pinch.
Right.
And then you know that means he's going to be extra dangerous, right? It's
Hmm.
like now my livelihood is being threatened, so I can't care for y'all. I got to do
Yeah.
what I got to do. And that becomes evident in the next scene. But I was just like, this is like a cornered rabid raccoon, right? You don't want to
Right.
corner the rabid raccoon. Stuff gets real wild. I was with the nice reforms, Milchick. I mean, they were giving y'all a lot of mouth. It wasn't going great, but I feel like there was a solve for that. The
Right.
Orpo was a little much. That we shouldn't have done.
Yeah, the Orpo wasn't giving what you wanted it to
It
give.
was not giving. No.
But like if we think about like the way Dylan was headed,
Yes.
right? It was totally working for him. He was about
Yes.
to be performer of the year
Exactly.
to be able to see his Audi's wife again.
I feel like in another quarter, another point in time, without this Cold Harbor thing being such the focus, if this were just a general quarter that everyone was working their stuff, I feel like he could have found an angle for everybody. And the kindness
Yeah.
reforms could have worked. I think
Right.
they could have worked. And we could maybe have a very different experience for the innies at Lumon.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
because we're so narrow focused on this Cold Harbor thing and whatever the importance of it is, that it's just like, we ain't got time for this nonsense. We don't got time to be nice.
Right.
Okay. Get it done. Get it
Yeah.
done.
Right.
Okay, this is going to be a little short bit, but again, a very impactful bit. So, immediately after Mark has his little glitchy moment, he looks up at the clock and realizes it's almost 5, might as well go home. So, Mark heads
Hmm.
down the hall towards the elevators, but as he enters the elevator and they start to close, we see a hand interject to stop it from closing, and it's Milchick's hand. And then he pushes them back open, inserts his key card, and steps inside to have a conversation with Mark. He starts asking very smart questions, and Mark starts giving very smart answers, clearly emboldened by calling out Milchick's BS all day today.
Hmm.
And Milchick then takes a step forward, all up in Mark's face, and says, does Helly know that you had sex with her Audi at the Ortbo? And Mark's face just ghost white, ghost white. And he immediately turns around, grabs his key card, and the doors just close on a very stunned Mark. And you can see that Milchick was like, checkmate, biatch. After that, we see Mark's Audi because now he's returned to above ground. And we would see him, he's just walking out. It's a normal day. He's heading home. But then we notice that we're not the only ones that are watching Mark leave for the day. In fact, we see a very familiar red hue of wavy tendrils watching Mark walk away towards the doors. And then she too turns and walks the other way. So this elevator scene, again, we're adding to the
Yeah.
tension and the stress that I feel.
Yeah.
And we are seeing that cornered rabid raccoon, the claws come out, like, and didn't know what was going to happen in that elevator. But as soon as he stepped inside, I was like, oh, this is not good.
Mhm.
This is not good. I don't know. Is he going to hit him? You know me, my default is like, oh no, someone's going to
Right.
what?
Someone's gonna slap somebody.
You know, I'm always thinking that somebody's going to slap somebody, but sometimes your words slap harder.
Yeah. This scene too, I just like the composition
Mm-hmm.
of it
Mm-hmm.
for the cinematography because the way they were positioned, it was at an angle so that the corner of the elevator was split like directly between them, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when he crossed that boundary, he like actually crossed a physical line too. It's like visually and
Mm-hmm.
to mirror what's going on in the scene. I was just like, oh, I see that. I see that happening. I like that.
So to echo that, all episode I have been noting these moments where the cinematography is telling the story visually, and I have found it
Hmm.
so interesting. So like the first time I noticed it was when Helly comes into the bathroom to talk to Mark, right? And you see that Helly is appearing before Mark, but then there's also a mirror version of Helly also in frame.
Yeah.
And it's just like this, again, this weird duality, what's real, what isn't,
Two of you.
two
Why is
of
it? Yeah.
you, and I've got to wrestle with both of that, and I'm not trying to have that. And just again kind of seeing the different angles from which like her straight on is dealing with Mark, but then you see a different angle of her face coming through the mirror, and it's just trippy. And how that's kind of telling the similar story of like what Mark's wrestling with and also what Helly's wrestling with. Like, I can't control what's happening over here. I can only give you what I'm giving you. And then the other thing I noticed was when Helly chased after Mark and they were talking in the hall. And I found it so interesting that the two shot they set up there had Helly fully clear in frame, no obstruction. And then Mark had the wall just slightly obstructing
Yeah.
his view. So it's indicating one, that a part of him is now walled off from her, but
Yeah.
also again reinforcing this reintegration narrative that it's like there is a part of him that we can't see but is active,
Hmm.
right, is playing in the background.
Hmm.
And I just liked that little moment too, and I was like, ooh, chef's kiss. And then from that moment, we get a fade when Helly walks off. We get a fade from Mark to Natalie, and they're literally looking right at each other in the fade in, fade out. And I was like, okay, I don't really know what they're trying to say in this visual, but
Hmm.
it's very telling that they're both kind of seeing eye to eye in a way. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like these are two characters who feel trapped by their circumstances, if that's what they're trying to say.
Hmm.
I don't know if they're trying to say like these are two characters who, when in doubt, perform, right? When you can't deal with
Yeah.
the rest of life, just perform, because those are both two characters that
Hmm.
kind of just default to work when they can't deal with their emotions and deal with life. But something in there was like this mirror parallel between Natalie and Mark, which I found interesting because those are two characters that I wouldn't sync up with one another, but clearly
Right.
in the visuals they wanted to make that connection with us. And
Yeah.
then I already mentioned it a little bit, but the performance review, there's definitely a moment, and it's after Mr. Drummond really starts nailing in his reprimand to Milchick, that they get a single off Milchick, but he's literally shoved into the corner of the frame, and
Hmm.
Mr. Drummond's head is just like huge in the
Huge.
frame,
Huge.
just huge, swallowing him up. And you literally just see this man just kind of forced up against the wall
Yeah.
by this other presence. And like we said, now we have the elevator one. So it's just like they are doing it in this episode. I mean, they've been doing it for the last two seasons, but like
Right.
again, the things that they're trying to tell you is like, we don't have to say it to convey it. Oh, that should be a slogan. We don't have to say it to convey it. Has anybody done
Lord.
that? Sorry. T-shirt idea for the crew. So I just was so captivated by the visual imagery and storytelling this episode that was happening. And
Hmm.
again, I tip my hat not just to the cinematographer, to the camera techs, to set deck, and obviously the directing too, to like get all these visuals to be positioned so strategically that it's like carrying the story forward. Okay, that's all I got.
Okay. After coming back above ground, Mark heads home for the night and he's still coughing steadily. We then find ourselves at the Hale household as Devon reads Ricken's adjusted chapters for the book. However, none of what she reads sounds anywhere near Ricken's ideology. Devon is miffed, knowing full well that this is Lumon manipulation, but Ricken insists that if this is what gets his ideas to the masses, then it'll be worth it. And not to mention the fat check that they'll receive that pays for their lavish lifestyle.
Yee.
We cut to Irving in his house, and he takes one last look at his paintings, the clues that he worked so hard to give his innie. And now he's been let go, and that truth will never come out. And so he takes each painting down off the wall one by one. He then goes outside to make another anonymous phone call from the payphone, letting the person know that he got fired and he thinks it's because they knew what his innie was up to. He then notices the same car stalking him, but this time he confronts it. He approaches the car and it's Bert, and he accosts him for following him. And Bert says that he did because Irving showed up at his door screaming his name. And then he reveals that he also worked at Lumon, and Lumon fired him unexpectedly and told him after a little pressing that it was due to a workplace affair. And he assumes it may have been with Irving's innie because, he showed up at his house screaming his name. And so does his husband, Fields. Then he invites Irving over for dinner the following night to have a ham so that the three of them can talk and get to know one another and figure some things out.
My man Bert's back with the swag.
Oh, Bert.
You done managed to get your man on the side to have dinner with your husband?
Yeah, right. I was like, are you flirt? Are you flirt? You just told him that your husband was miffed and canceled y'all's trip because you think you had an affair with this man and now you flirting with him. Like, I love the way he makes his little joke at the end of the conversation, like, I know where you live, and he's like, I see it, and he gets that like old man wave off, like, I'm just joking.
I'm just joshing.
You got me. I was like, okay, Bert, what's happening? Are you trying to get a throuple going?
Or a backup, Fields ain't happy. So what if Fields decides to walk? Maybe I give this Irving guy a try. We hit it off on the inside.
I also love the way Irving said, so you think we were an item? And the way he asked it was just a little bit of any Irving. Like, it seemed
it was a little.
We haven't heard Audi Irving speak that much, but what we have heard of him is decidedly different from how any Irving speaks. But that little line made me be like, oh.
Do you know another moment when I noticed it is when he was hanging up the call and he says, I gotta go. And he says it the same way he says to Bert when Bert tries to hit on him. He's like, I gotta go. I was like, it's the same thing.
It's true.
Yeah, I am very curious to see this dinner party. How's that gonna go? What is that gonna be? Is Fields gonna be there? Is he saying Fields is gonna be there and maybe Fields ain't gonna be there and it's just gonna be you and me?
Right. Tricky.
I don't know. But Bert said the swag doesn't stop in or out. Okay. You understand? It is what it is.
So when Bert revealed why he had been fired, I was like very surprised that they basically told him the truth.
Yeah.
They probably made it sound worse than it was, like they had done more, but generally they didn't like make up a story. He had to press him for it, but I was surprised that they gave him what they gave him.
Yeah. And we still don't know who Irving is talking to.
Yeah, I still can't figure it out.
I'm starting to think it's not Ragabi.
Well, yeah, I don't think so anymore.
I was thinking that made the most sense, but now I'm like, no, I feel like Irving's on some other side quest, something. It did give me vibes back to the Lexington letter where I'm like, is he maybe working with like an investigative journalist of some kind to try to put together like an expose of Lumon?
Yeah, I immediately was like, who is this new player?
Yeah.
And what is going to happen when they're in the mix? Because I don't think it's Ragabi anymore. I think that was just the only guess we could have had in the beginning.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see who they will reveal in that capacity. Like you said, who's the new player in the mix with all of this? And if I'm being honest, that feels like a season 3 storyline. I bet they introduce this person right at the end or near the end.
Yeah.
And that'll be the setup for what happens next season.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. I don't have much to say about Devon and Ricken other than I still don't understand how Devon ended. I don't get what.
Yeah. What? I was so mad at him. First of all, as soon as Devon read the excerpt, I was like, that's the exact opposite of what you wrote right before she said it. I was like, yes, Devon, we're always on the same page. We're always on the same page because Devon is the only one with any kind of sense, except for the fact that she's with Ricken in the first place.
Which is the least sensical thing she could do. And I just need to understand it. And every time I think I'm starting to understand it, Ricken says or does something that makes me not understand it anymore. And this was one of them when he said that thing about like, oh, well, unless you all of a sudden don't love the millions of copies of books that I sell that afford to pay for this lavish home and lifestyle that I was like,
right.
No, you aren't.
Right.
I know you aren't.
And here's the thing, the way he said it made me think that that is what is coming. And so he's like, oh, if you don't like the idea of that, we're gonna get this influx. So again, I'm like, okay, I'm inclined to believe that the lifestyle that you guys have right now is because of Devon, not you. And you're the sellout. Don't blame her, right? You are the sellout here. It's not because of her.
Exactly. Because I'm like, I am almost certain that, yeah, that was never the thing for Devon. If anything, she has encouraged you to be your more authentic self, whether or not you sell books.
What this scene did was remove any of the little bits of humanizing Ricken that we've been getting, that they've been trying to build to be like, yeah, on the surface, this is this pretentious, egotistical guy that like is here for your amusement and also to be hated. But no, he's not just that. He's got a good middle somewhere in there. But it just removed that, because at the end of it, at the bottom of all of this is, you know what they do now. We now know that they have been hurting people, not just that, they have been hurting a member of our family, and you are going to help them.
Is this a villain origin story for Ricken?
I don't know. Maybe.
We talked about this in the UUR bonus episode on our Patreon, but this sounds like the villain origin of a cult leader. I said it on there, and I'm going to say it again, because again, just the enticement of money and notoriety and having all these adoring people in the wake of your knowledge, all that culty stuff sounds like it would very much appeal to Ricken's ego. So we'll see, I guess.
Who cares if they're torturing people down there?
Details. All right, last section, home stretch. So back at Mark's, Ragabi is rifling through Gemma's belongings down in the basement, saying that she needs pressure points to rattle his memories. He then sees Gemma's ashes, and Mark asks, if Gemma's alive, then who do I have? And Ragabi confesses that Lumon has connections all over the city, including the morgue. So he then asks, are they hurting her? And Ragabi says she doesn't know. Mark then heads upstairs and hears your outie in the distance. He turns to Asal and asks what she said. And she replies, I didn't say anything. He looks at her, and then he continues upstairs and gets another flash of the voice. Starts to hear it again. He looks back down and sees Ragabi clearly is not talking to him. So he's all thrown off, and he continues to hear that same thing saying, you're outie, you're outie, you're outie. And finally, we have some head shiftiness, and he is at Lumon on the severed floor in the break room hallway, and he walks towards the end of the hall and out the door, and then we find him back in the white halls that we know of Lumon, and he starts to traverse the hallways following this voice that he's hearing, and he circles around, and then all of a sudden he is face to face with Miss Casey, and we're hearing these voices that are saying what his outie likes. Your outie does this, your outie does that, and Miss Casey is speaking to him. When he turns around and sees her in the flesh, he is stunned. So Mark is just standing there frozen in sadness, seeing his wife, who he has not seen in years. And then the last thing that she says to him is, your outie is going to, and then it cuts off and the flash ends. And Mark is back in his present reality, in his home, in the hallway, and just tears well up in his eyes.
So back to Ragabi, just to go in order. Ragabi, you a damn lie. You know damn well that they're hurting Gemma. They're hurting all of them. This is why you left.
Exactly.
This is why you left. This is why you're doing what you're doing.
Exactly. Do you think she isn't telling him because she doesn't want him to freak out and mess up the reintegration and get all bloody nosed? And
I guess, but
I don't know. Like, I can't. It may so be more
lying in this show.
There is. It could be her saving her own skin. I mean, I'm sure Mark would have a very low opinion of her if he found out that she contributed to any violence against his wife. So I could see her just as easily underplaying it so that he doesn't give her the boot.
Yeah.
But she definitely had a pause there. So it's like, we know you're lying. You know good and doggone well what they're doing to these people down there.
Yep.
I understand you can't just flat out be like, yeah, they're hurting her. Because then Mark is the type who's going to be reactive and just want to storm the castle and do some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, could you be a little more indicative that, like, you know, it's hard to say what exactly they're doing to her down there, but the best thing would be to get her out or something like that, you know?
Right.
So that you aren't just playing it like, oh, no, I don't know what they do. Okay.
Side eye.
Exactly. This coughing is making me nervous. And I've already seen one person drop dead on the floor.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm curious why, since the procedure that we saw happen was mostly having to do with the brain wave factor and not a physical interruption of the body, why
Hmm.
it's having an adverse physical effect when reintegration happens. Like, is it that brain waves have been disrupted and now they're like not able to properly conduct business within the body? Because I'm just
All the
like, why
wires are
does this
crossed.
keep leading to like, uh-oh, coughs and now headaches and now bloody nose, bloody eyes? I don't know. I'm wondering why it keeps leading to a physical deterioration. Like is Lumon correct in the sense that at the end of the day, there really is no way to reintegrate? Reintegration isn't possible because ultimately you're just probably going to die from it.
I don't know. I mean, there was full synaptic coupling in on the chip for PD.
Yeah.
So does that mean it is possible? I mean, they had that physical proof of that. But I don't know.
I guess what I mean is like, yeah, your brain might reintegrate, but it will be at the cost of your body. So like,
Yeah,
yes, reintegration, but also no.
right. I don't know. But also, when Mark is asking Ragabi if tonight's the night they get to do more, and she says, one more night, that's usually best. And he's like, usually you've done this once. I was like, okay, so did she lie to PD? Because PD said multiple times that he was not the first person to be reintegrated. Or, did she lie to him to get him to agree to it? Or was PD the first time she tried this method? And she had done it some other way.
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
And if that's the case, what made her switch method?
Or was someone else doing the reintegrating and maybe had to hand off to her? I don't
Hmm.
know.
Yeah.
But clearly, yeah, she overplayed her hand where that's concerned. And I'm surprised that she was honest with Mark about the fact that she'd only done it one other time.
Yeah. One thing that I forgot to put in the notes, but that was another like, oh, this is not a sign that this is going better than it went for Petey, is the fact that his flash of Gemma and the wellness center. So the fact that he was getting his wellness center visit, things about his Audi didn't line up with the wellness center and the vision that he got. It was
Mm,
the hallway where we know like a conversation like that wouldn't have occurred in the
right.
hallway. Just reminds me of PD saying that the memories that he's not getting them in any kind of order. They're all out of sync.
Yeah.
So I would assume if Ragabi had perfected the method, it would be coming back in a more orderly fashion.
Right.
And so this was a sign to me that I was like, this is exactly how PD described it.
Yep.
That's not a good thing.
Nope.
Not a good thing.
Your Audi is going to what? Going to what, Miss Casey?
I don't know.
Huh. Okay. Well, that is episode 5. That's all
That's
she
all you,
wrote.
that's it. That's it. Woo. Well, and with that, I hope you enjoyed our breakdown. As always, you can follow us on all the social medias. We are on Lemonade, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky Thread, at the UUR Pod on all the socials. Reach out to us, follow us, comment, and you can also email us at the uurpod@gmail.com. Don't forget, you can also become a patron and support the flourishing of the podcast through joining our Severed Floor, where you can have access to extended cuts, bonus episodes, extra content, and we are building out other things that will be going up on there as the season goes along.
Indeed, indeed.
Um,
Help
yes.
us get there, guys.
And
Help us get there. We're trying.
yes. And as always, please rate, review, subscribe on your podcast app of choice. Thank you for over 5,000 streams on Spotify. That's so
Woo-woo.
exciting. We're so glad you're
We
here.
are. And it has,
Mhm.
like we have said before, I'm sure a bunch of times, we're honestly having fun in meshing with the community for Severance, seeing everybody's theories and ideas, and even just kind of the support everyone is giving one another, especially the people who are creatives in the space that are trying to either do content creation for the show or what have you. It's been really dope to see people show up for each other and support each other
Yeah.
in these endeavors. And we are glad to be one of the folks that you guys are supporting. So thank you for listening. We hope you continue to listen. Thank you for the feedback you've offered. It's all been very vital to the furthering of what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, guys, this has been episode 5, Trojan's Horse. We will see you guys next time for episode 6, Attila. Oh, I had some theories about what that title could mean. Maybe I'll leave that as a cliffhanger. You guys can think about it. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been the You Are. And remember, the board appreciates your sacrifice.
Oh.